Have you ever watched a kid who's always tripping or struggling to catch a ball and wondered, is this just a phase or is it something more? Well, today we're diving into a really common but often misunderstood condition called Developmental Coordination Disorder, or DCD. Let's talk about what that really means.
We've all seen it, right? A child who seems just a little out of sync. Maybe they trip over their own feet more than other kids, or sports are a constant struggle. It's so easy for parents and teachers to ask this exact question. Is it just clumsiness, or is there actually something else going on here?
Let's get a little more specific. Does any of this ring a bell? The kid who is constantly bumping into the coffee table or dropping their cup at dinner, or the one who finds getting dressed every morning with all those tricky buttons and zippers to be a real battle. Maybe their handwriting is super frustrating for them, or they just plain avoid playground games because they can't quite get the hang of catching a ball or learning to ride their bike. These aren't just little quirks. Sometimes they're clues to a much bigger picture. So when these kinds of challenges pop up again and again, and they start to impact a child's everyday life, it's really helpful to put a name to them. And this isn't about slapping on a label. It's all about understanding. The official term is Developmental Coordination Disorder, or DCD. Now, you might have also heard it called dyspraxia. And yet, those two terms are often used for the same thing. But here's the most important takeaway. DCD is not about a child being weak. It's a neurodevelopmental condition. Basically, it's a challenge with how the brain plans a movement and then effectively communicates that plan to the body to get it done smoothly. And this isn't just some vague idea. DCD has very clear official diagnostic criteria, which are laid out right here in the DSM-5. That's the guidebook used by clinicians all over the world. Having these criteria is a huge deal because it means that a diagnosis is based on a solid, recognized framework, not just a casual observation. So let's break that down real quick. Criterion A is the starting point. It basically means that a child's motor skills, things like jumping, writing, using scissors, are noticeably behind what you'd expect for their age. They've had the same chances to learn as their friends, but there's still a real gap.
Okay, now for Criterion B. And honestly, this part is crucial. These motor skill issues aren't just minor annoyances. To be DCD, they have to actively get in the way of day-to-day life. We're talking about things like slowing down the morning routine, making it hard to finish schoolwork, or even stopping them from just joining in and having fun with friends during recess. The impact is real and it's consistent. And finally, we've got criteria C and D. These just help clarify two last things. First, these problems start showing up early on in a child's development. And second, we have to rule out other possible causes. So the coordination issues can't be because of an intellectual disability or a problem with their vision or some other neurological condition. DCD is its own distinct thing. All right, so we've got the clinical definition down, but what does all of this actually look like in the real world? Let's talk about the day-to-day impact that DCD can have on a child's life. One of the first and most personal places it shows up is in simple self-care tasks. All the little things we do every single morning just to get ready for the day. I mean, just think about it. Think about the fine motor control it takes just to line up a tiny button with a buttonhole, or that super complex sequence of loops and pulls to tie shoelaces. For a kid with DCD, these can feel like monumental tasks. Mealtimes can be a mess, and that whole process of just getting ready can be really slow and awkward, which is a tough way to start your day. And then they get to school, where a whole new set of physical demands comes into play, and the impact can show up big time in their schoolwork. Handwriting is often the most obvious struggle. It can be slow, really messy, and just plain exhausting for them. But it's also about using everyday classroom tools, like scissors or a ruler. And you can imagine gym class can become a huge source of anxiety. Even something as simple as keeping their desk organized requires a level of physical planning that can be really, really tough. And this brings us to an absolutely critical point. DCD has nothing to do with how smart a child is. Take Allison, for example. She was a super bright fourth grader, but she really struggled with her handwriting and keeping her things organized. Her parents and teachers knew she was intelligent, but her schoolwork just didn't show it. Getting that DCD diagnosis was a total game changer. It unlocked the accommodations she needed in the classroom, and just as important, it gave her the emotional support to understand her own challenges and feel good about her amazing abilities. So, what about playtime? The part of a kid's day that's supposed to be nothing but fun? Well, DC can have a huge impact there too.
Whether it's the big movements needed for riding a bike or playing catch, or the smaller, more precise movements for building a model airplane or doing a puzzle, it can all be incredibly frustrating. And what often happens? The child starts to avoid these things. They might choose to play alone or hang out with younger kids, and they can miss out on all that amazing social bonding that happens in team sports and playground games.
So if a lot of this is starting to sound familiar, you're probably wondering, how common is this, and are there things that might put a child at higher risk?
Well, the numbers might actually surprise you. DCD affects about 5 to 8% of school-age children. So think about it this way. In a typical classroom of, say, 25 kids, there are probably at least 1 or 2 students who are dealing with these exact challenges. It's one of the most common childhood disorders out there. So if you're seeing this, you are definitely not alone. Now, research has pointed to a few key risk factors. We know that children who were born very prematurely or with a very low birth weight are at a higher risk. Statistically, boys tend to be diagnosed more often than girls, though we're still figuring out exactly why that is. And some of the earliest signs can be delayed motor milestones, like a baby who doesn't start walking until after 15 months old.
Okay, understanding the what and the why is the first half of the puzzle. The second, and maybe most important half, is about action. So what's the path forward? How is DCD actually identified?
It's actually a pretty logical 3-step process. It all starts with observation. That's when parents and teachers notice those ongoing difficulties we've been talking about. From there, the next step is screening. This is where we move from just a gut feeling to some structured data. And the final step is a formal assessment by a professional, like an occupational therapist who can officially confirm the diagnosis.
One of the most common tools used in that screening step is this, right here, the Developmental Coordination Disorder Questionnaire, or DCDQ. It's a questionnaire designed for parents, and it asks really specific questions about how a child handles everyday tasks compared to kids their own age. It's a fantastic way to turn those, I think something might be up, observations into concrete information that a professional can really use. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. Why is all of this so important? Well, this quote says it all. Early identification by the most important adults in a child's life, their parents and their teachers, is absolutely essential. It is the first, most critical step to getting that child the right support and the right encouragement to help them participate, succeed, and just reach their full potential. So, are you ready to test your knowledge on everything we've covered? To help you lock in some of these key ideas, we've put together a fun little crossword puzzle. Go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen right now to give it a shot. Because at the end of the day, a little bit of awareness goes such a long way, and that understanding is the real key to unlocking a child's incredible potential.